Hey crew, before we start our latest mission, I want to remind you that you can get updates on the show, plus news and reviews from the world of Trek by following us on Twitter and liking us on Facebook. Go to twitter.com/EISTPOD or facebook.com/EISTPod or both and click follow or like to get on board. Plus, be sure to subscribe to the show on iTunes or your media platform of choice. And when you do, give us a review, would you? At the very least, give us a rating, because that's how iTunes and other platforms know we're doing a good job. And people who do good jobs get more exposure, so if you like the show, give us a review or a rating, and it would really help us out. And finally, if you really like the show and you really want to help us out, click over to patreon.com/EISTpod, where you'll find our Patreon page. Money may be worthless in the 24th century, but we are not there yet, and your contributions can go a long way towards keeping us flying and bringing you weekly looks at the world of Trek and more conversations with authors, artists, actors, and aficionados of said world. There are many different tiers or ranks at which you can join, and many rewards available up to and including a chance at appearing as a guest on the show yourself. So head to patreon.com/EISTpod to join our ranks today. Any questions? You can contact the show at eistpod@gmail.com. And now, let's get underway.
It's worked so far, but we're not out yet.
I wanna know what you're thinking. There are some things you can't hide. I wanna know what you're feeling. Tell me what's on your mind.
Pure energy. Pure energy.
Hailing frequencies open, and welcome to Enterprising Individuals, the Star Trek discussion podcast that boldly goes into excruciating detail about the series, characters, and stories of the Star Trek universe. I'm your host, Caliban, and, oh shoot, I left my agonizer in my other uniform pants, so you can just double agonize me next time? How about that? I'm joined on this episode by Jonathan Lane, one of the authors of the Star Trek reference book, Starship Spotter. He also runs the website Fan Film Factor, which features news and information about Star Trek fan productions, and he's worked for years as a fan consultant for Star Trek licensed products. He's also a regular blog contributor for the Star Trek Exanar fan film site. John, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you very much. It's good to be here.
Permission to come aboard granted. Today we'll be talking about Mirror Mirror, the fourth episode of the second season of Star Trek, the original series. It's an episode everyone knows, if not by name, then at least that one where Spock has a beard. And it's inspired many similar concepts in other shows, and more to the point, has inspired many fan films and fan creations, something we'll be talking about a little later in the show. John, clearly you're a fan of this episode, but can you elaborate on why you chose Mirror Mirror to discuss on the show today?
Well, actually, I just happened to have been watching it with my son. He's 6 years old, and every night when I exercise, I watch another episode of Star Trek with him. We just basically have gone through TOS. We're on our second trip through TOS now, and we just happened to have just done Mirror Mirror, which I thought was a great episode anyway. He really liked it, and I said, well, it's fresh in my mind. Let's do it.
Sure. And you said that he's 6, right? So, and
six.
This is his second time through the show.
Yeah, well, when he first started doing Star Trek with me, he was, I think, probably about 5, maybe 4.5 or 5 years old. And,
Sure.
You know, he was just starting to get them. And by the time we got through it, I was like, do I head into, like, the movies and Next Gen? Or,
Right.
you know, do I do TNG or TOS one more time? Like, let's do it one more time. Let's do what I did when I was a kid, and you know, watch them over and over and over again until I memorize them. And so anyway, it's amazing because now that he's 6, he just we're getting so into it.
Now, he's seen the original series. How's he doing on the other shows? Has he seen any Next Generation, anything like that?
No, the only thing he knows about Next Generation is that I have, you know, all the ship models and everything here, and I've got a little Worf action figure. He really doesn't know who Worf is. He just knows they like to play with him.
Okay.
And anyway, yeah, so it's all of that stuff. You know, he's seen the other Enterprises. You know, he knows that there's more than just one Enterprise up on the shelf. And occasionally I let him play with the E. But yeah, you know, aside from that, no, he really doesn't know what's going to be happening later on in Star Trek, which is fine with me. I'm okay letting him just sort of live in the TOS universe.
He's getting it in the right order, too. It's not like he's getting into Enterprise or Discovery and then sort of discovering himself that there are older series. He's starting right from the top.
Yeah, I kind of wanted him to do it the way I did. In fact, when we did Star Wars, I did not start with Episode 1. I started with Episode 4. And I let him watch Episode 4 over and over and over again before I showed him Empire Strikes Back. And so he had no idea that Darth Vader was Luke Skywalker's father. No idea whatsoever. And so when that moment happened, I videotaped him.
Sure.
And dude, it was the most hysterical thing ever. I should probably send you that video to post with your blog, but his reaction, it was
and it's so neat too, because I remember when I was a kid and those movies were coming out, I mean, there wasn't really like a concept of a spoiler back then. Like your friend saw the movie, he came back and he told you everything that happened in it. But it's a spoiler that's so old now that it's not really even a spoiler. I can't imagine that kids are throwing around "I am your father" on the playground. So he's got a chance to really experience that, like like you videotaped, like the surprise, like it's supposed to be.
Well, I knew I had to get him. I had to get him indoctrinated to Star Wars early. Because nowadays it's ubiquitous. I mean, every kid has Star Wars.
Oh, sure.
Whatever. And he's going to be watching Star Wars Rebels and Clone Wars and whatever on TV. And so he was 4.5 when I made the decision. Okay, I've got to prepare him for Star Wars. Mm-hmm. And I wasn't sure how to do that at the age of 4.5 because he's 4.5. So what I did was, before I showed him the movie, I told him the Star Wars story as sort of like a bedtime story.
Okay.
And in the car. And I didn't just do it one night. I mean, we did it over the course of a couple of months where I would go into what was going on. So he would know what was going on. And then I showed him the movie. And then he stayed with that movie for like 2 months or so until he started memorizing it. I had it on his iPad. And he just loved that movie because watching it over and over and over again. So I knew, at the moment where he was going to see, find out that Darth Vader was Luke Skywalker's father, that was going to be an absolute surprise. But if I'd waited any longer, his friends would have started talking about it. And it would not have been the shock that it was. It would have been just imprinted on his DNA by that point.
It's kind of the wrong show, but
that's right. I can't wait till Star Trek podcast.
Yeah, I can't wait till he finds out that Khan is still alive.
No, don't do that.
Oh no. Well, first let's talk your backstory. How did you come to Star Trek and become a fan?
Oh man, I've been a fan since I think I was born like 2 days before Arena aired for the first time.
Oh wow, okay.
But I remember being a Star Trek fan and watching it when I was 3 years old. It was always on. I grew up. It was on at 6 o'clock. We had dinner in my room, and I watched Star Trek.
Right.
And I remember at the age of 10 or thereabouts, I was at a restaurant, and my mom was talking to another mom. We were waiting for tables, and there was this really snotty 11-year-old kid next to me, and the moms had apparently discovered that we both loved Star Trek, so they decided to get the two kids together while they waited for a table. Okay. And so anyway, so the other kid says to me, "Oh, you like Star Trek, huh?" And I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "Well, how many shuttlecraft does the Enterprise have?" I had no idea. And I was like, well, I don't know. How many? He goes, 6. It was revealed in the episode The Omega Glory when they went on to the USS Exeter, and they said that there's all 6 shuttlecraft are still in the hangar bay.
Right.
And
okay.
And I was like, okay. And so that was when I first discovered that there was such a thing as Star Trek trivia. And so the next time I watched that episode, I was listening for that. And it was probably like maybe a year later that the episode finally came around again. And I discovered that the snot-nosed kid, was wrong. There were only 4 shuttlecraft.
Oh, okay.
So I am 40 years older than that now, and I still remember that snot-nosed kid was wrong. But that started me on my journey of Star Trek trivia, where I started watching these episodes more closely to get all the little nitty-gritty stuff out of them. And ultimately, that Star Trek trivia helped me in the mid-1990s when I was hired by Viacom Consumer Products to be a Star Trek fan consultant. I basically was the trivia guy that the people in licensing went to say, okay, would Andorians do this?
Right, right.
And I literally got paid $20 an hour to say, no, Andorians would not do that, but Tellarites would.
Right.
I mean, can you imagine getting paid $20 an hour to say, you know what, this is more of a line that Deanna Troi should say than Dr. Crusher.
Right, right.
Because I started off with the Star Trek video games, then the CD-ROM licensing, and then
Okay, sure.
and then I did the menu for Quark's Bar and Restaurant, and I worked with museum guys and game and CD-ROM game developers and digital trading cards. So all this stuff, and then I eventually wrote Starship Spotter, which was kind of handing me something the last minute. Their author had flaked out on them, and they had like 23 days left to finish Starship Spotter, and it wasn't even started yet.
Oh wow!
So I and Alex Rosenzweig, I just basically grabbed Alex, who basically memorizes NCC numbers. That's if you think I know Star Trek trivia, his amazing. And I said,
right.
Alex, I said we have got 23 days to write the book of our dreams.
Right.
And we did. And so Starship Spotter's out there. So if you read that, if you want to actually get Starship Spotter, the good stuff is the stuff we wrote. Then just understand that 23 days.
You were doing this at a time too when there was no real internet to go to. It had to be in your head. Nowadays there's things like Memory Alpha, and it's all sort of crowdsourced, and people can reference certain articles and sources of information. But you were the Memory Alpha of the day.
Yeah. I mean, we had things to go by. We had tech manuals.
Yeah.
I remember once Alex and I were on the phone with John Van Sitters now he's at CBS Licensing, and we were discussing literally for about 20 minutes whether the Enterprise D was 642 meters long or 642.5 meters long.
Wow.
20 minutes on the phone with Van Sitters trying to figure this one out.
Over a half meter,
a half meter, because there was one official thing that had it at 642, and another official thing that had it at 642.5. And it was like, which one do we go with? But yeah, it's amazing when your head is totally wrapped around Star Trek trivia and minutia, how long you can spend talking about it.
I like that you mentioned the Star Trek Experience before. I was talking to Dave Rossi for another episode recently, who worked on it as well. And one of my big regrets is that I never really got to go to see the Star Trek Experience at the Hilton in Vegas.
So sorry, you missed the.
Yeah, I know. I've heard all the stories though.
I've got a story you've never heard.
Oh, but please.
I had just started working for licensing. I'd been working for them for about 6 months when they handed me the menu to do.
Sure.
Paramount Parks and the Las Vegas Hilton had tried their best to create a menu for Quark's Bar and Restaurant. The best they could come up with, Galaxy Burger and Cosmic Fries. And stuff. It was boring.
Right.
And so I was loaned out. I was working with the person who was handling CD-ROM games, and the person from Paramount Parks kind of borrowed me to write the menu. And she said, "Can you come up with anything better than a Cosmic Burger?" I said, "Yeah, you call it a Borger." Sure. I mean,
next,
and just one after the other, and and I've got I saw this menu somewhere. We had fun stuff. We had the wrap of Khan. We had the barbecue continuum pizza. We had a pizza the action. That was a good one for a pizza. I mean, it's anything I could possibly come up with. Sure. I had some friends help me out from my Star Trek fan club, the USS Angeles chapter. One of my friends came up with the Warp Core Breach as a drink, which actually made it to an episode of Deep Space Nine. Quark served a drink from the actual Quark's menu there. And
do you remember what's in that drink?
Well, actually, theirs is kind of a Long Island iced tea kind of Mai Tai. Really, I mean, it was a Warp Core Breach. I mean, the amount of alcohol in this thing.
Sure.
Anyway, so I had finished writing this menu once again in record time. I mean, less than 3 months, and I had this menu done because it was totally last minute. And anyway, it was about time to pay me, and they had never had me sign a work for hire agreement, which means they would just pay me once and it would be done.
Yeah.
And they were kind of stuck. I mean, I had them over a barrel on this thing because this was approved, and I said, should I hold off for a licensing agreement or some royalties or something for this and
right.
The person I was working with at Viacom at this point, she said, well, you could, but right now we really like you because you're a great guy, you do wonderful work, you're funny, you're smart. If you piss off one of our licensees, we're not going to like you as much anymore. And
right.
At best, because they were going to be selling the menus there, they're going to sell the menus for $10 a menu or something. And they said, at best, you're going to get 25 cents per menu, at best. So let's say they sell 1,000 menus. You're going to make $250. Guarantee you we're going to give you more money than that as we hire you in the future if we continue to like you. So there I was, and I signed over. So everybody's like, did you get any royalties on that? No, I didn't. I got $500 and I was done. And here's the funny punchline of that story. In the first year, while they were still actually selling those menus, they sold, I think, like 70 menus. That was the amount they actually sold. Sure. 10,000 of them were stolen.
Oh, no.
People just kept taking them from the tables.
Just right.
So it's like, yeah, I made the right choice there.
And after you gave them the Geordie egg roll, and after all that, they did that to you. Well, I wanted to ask you, too, about your involvement with fanfilmfactor.com. Can you talk about that?
I was actually in an early fan film, although fan films trace back about 50 years. Fan films actually were produced back when Star Trek was still in first run. It was basically parents just videotaping their kids in the living room or in their Star Trek pajamas.
Yeah.
But back in 1999, I was in the voyages of the USS Angelus with my fellow crew members of the Angelus here in Los Angeles. And then later on, I was part of Hidden Frontier. Rob Caves did a 7-year, actually ultimately a 10-year Star Trek fan film that had spin-offs and 70 episodes. So I was in a few of those, and I was a production assistant in others. And so I sort of knew about fan films.
Sure.
And I watched a few along the way. And I just watched more and more, and they got better and better and better. And then in 2014, I became an AXA nerd.
Sure.
I actually coined the term AXA nerd. But I fell in love with that. I got so excited with all these crowdfunding things, and all the fan films were just becoming so amazing. And it wasn't just Axanar that was funding. I mean, it was Star Trek Renegades and Star Trek New Voyages and Star Trek Continues and Star Trek Farragut, and all these wonderful fan films were coming out, and they looked really, 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 really good.
Yeah.
But I became really a groupie for Axanar. I mean, I was a stalker first, and then I was a volunteer. And the closer I got to Axanar, the more involved I got. And Alec Peters, who was running Axanar, eventually asked a bunch of the more prolific volunteers if they wanted to write regular blogs. And there are about maybe 7 or 8 of us who stepped forward, and they said, okay, what do you want to write about? And I said, well, what about fan films? So I got fan films. I got first choice. So I became the Fan Film Friday guy. And every Friday I'd write about a different fan film. And I did some interviews with the creators, and I tracked down stuff on the internet about them. And I did one of these every single frickin' Friday until Axanar got sued in late December of 2015. And then what started happening, I was still doing the Fan Film Fridays, but some of the creators didn't want to be on the Axanar website. They were afraid that they were going to get sued as well.
Oh, by connection, sure.
By connection. And it was Alec who said, why don't you create your own blog site? And that way you still work for, do stuff for us, but create your own blog site, and you can cover all the rest of them, because there's so much stuff that you can talk about for fan films.
Right.
And you're limited on Axanar because you just have like one blog that appears once a week. So I said, well, okay, I have no idea how to create a blog site, And, and Alex said, well, look, the guy who does our PR, Mike Boughton, he has, a whole blog site thing that he does, and he can just set it up for you. So I basically did it on as a subdomain of his blog site, Trek Bloggers.
Sure.
That's how I started. Now I'm officially separated from him. I'm on my own server because it's gotten so big. But then I just started writing all this stuff over and over again. All these fan films and all these creators, and they're really they're great people. They're so interesting.
Yeah.
Every interview is different. They're all they're not all the same. People living in their parents' basement.
As somebody who's involved in the fan film community, you've talked to so many people. Can you talk about what you think it is that drives people to return to these properties and keep making films, even now 50 years after the show's premiered?
Let me answer your question with a question.
Sure.
Why are you doing this podcast?
I'm doing a podcast. That's exactly right.
Okay. Seriously, how many times has everybody seen Mirror, Mirror? Who the heck cares about Mirror Mirror anymore. We've said everything we could possibly say about it. And yet here we are. So, and people will listen because maybe they'll discover something they didn't discover before. Or, the thing about Star Trek is it's the layers of the onion. You keep peeling it back and peeling it back. And I'll tell you something. I was watching, because I knew that I was going to be doing this podcast with you, and we, Jayden and I were still watching through Mirror Mirror at that point. And I noticed something in Mirror Mirror that after 50 years I had never noticed before. That scene where Uhura and Sulu were sort of making out a little bit on the bridge, and then suddenly she slaps him, and she heads for the turbo lift. And I had never noticed before that the two security guards who are standing on either side of the turbo lift are kind of slouched a little bit. They're not really at attention. They're kind of lazy and they're just leaning against the wall or whatever. And she just goes into the turbo lift, and there's Sulu, pissed as anything, the head of the Gestapo. And he suddenly notices the security guards, and they notice him, and they suddenly stand at attention. And it was there. It's been there in front of my face for 50 years. And yet it was only just like 2 nights ago that I noticed it. Right. And, it's like, so yeah, it's great with Star Trek. It's just you get to peel the layers of the onion one after the other and just see things you never saw before.
Yeah, well, let's talk about the episode. We are talking about Mirror Mirror, the 4th episode of the 2nd season of the original series. It first aired on October 6th, 1967. It was written by Jerome Bixby, who wrote 3 other episodes by any other name, Day of the Dove, which we've covered on the show, and Requiem for Methuselah. He's also famous for writing It's a Good Life for the Twilight Zone, the classic episode with Billy Mumy. And this episode was apparently based on a short story of his called One Way Street. The episode was directed by Mark Daniels, who I feel like that name keeps coming up. He's directed, I think, around 15 episodes, really great episodes of the series.
He did some of the best ones
Yeah, some of the best ones. Yeah, exactly. And this one itself was nominated for a Hugo in '68 for Best Dramatic Presentation. The star date is unknown in this episode, but it's probably just as well because there's a lot to deal with here. And your assignment, if you can, is to give us a 25-word synopsis of Mirror Mirror.
25 words or less.
That's right.
All righty. Boy meets Halkin. Boy beams up. Boy winds up on a different Enterprise. Boy almost gets assassinated. Boy discovers he's got a girl in his cabin. Boy discovers that he can make any other boy disappear anytime he wants to. Boy has to deal with other boy with a goatee. Boy manages to escape at just the last second, but right before escaping gives a speech that essentially says, hey, other boy, when I get replaced by my evil guy, as soon as he gets here, kill him.
Right.
Because, that's basically what Kirk says at the end. I mean, I don't know if you want to jump to the end of all this or whatever.
Oh, well, we can, yeah.
Let's just do it. Let's, throw contrivance to the winds. The best part of that episode, and I think any fan will agree, the best part of the episode, aside from the fact that Spock has a beard, and that's like the best goatee ever. Right. Actually, it's called a Fu Manchu if it's a full thing. But anyway, the best part of that is that last speech that Kirk gives, including the music underneath it. Mm-hmm. And it's that speech, in every revolution, there's one man with a vision, be the captain of this Enterprise, Spock. Now, what he's basically saying is kill the other Kirk.
Kind of, yeah.
Because that's the only way Spock is going to be the captain of this Enterprise.
Right.
So before Kirk goes, he basically said, okay, kill the other guy.
Right.
Nobody really knows about that. They won't really think about that. But yeah, that's pretty much what he said.
He's telling him, be a hero, but, do it your way. You do you.
Well, when in Rome, in this universe, that's a thing. And then, of course, the fun part about that is that, that Spock apparently does listen to Kirk, as we discover in Deep Space Nine. Right. And the whole universe goes to hell in a handbasket. Suddenly Earth is subjugated and, humans are weaklings and everybody else is the ones in power.
Right.
So, yeah, thanks a lot, Jim.
Right. I'm glad you brought that up because this episode does have a sequel in Crossover and, of course, the other Mirror episodes on DS9. And technically, this episode itself is a sequel to the 2-part episode In a Mirror Darkly on Star Trek Enterprise, where they kind of set this whole thing up.
It's a sequel. It's a sequel to a prequel and a prequel to a sequel.
Which makes perfect sense. Barbara Luna, who plays Marlena in this episode, reportedly had strep throat on the set, so she had 103-degree fever. So all of her kissing scenes with Shatner, of which she has a few, were postponed in filming for a few weeks. And Vic Perrin appears in this episode as Tharn. He was a perennial guest star on various TV shows throughout his career. He's also a prolific voice actor who's probably most famously known as the voice of Control in the intro of The Outer Limits.
Do not attempt to adjust your television set.
That's right.
And let me tell you, funny story about Vic Perrin.
Oh, please.
From my time. So you were talking about the days before the internet. And in the days before the internet, I got all my information about Star Trek from B. Joe Trimble's The Concordance. I've got a version of that is basically in sneeze condition. If I sneeze, that thing will just fall apart.
Right.
And every time I heard the Hulkin voice, Tharn's voice at the beginning of Mirror Mirror, I said, that sounds like the Metrone. Mm-hmm. You know, that angel guy that appears after Kirk defeats the Gorn.
Right.
Except that he's not listed in the credits there, because he was only a voiceover. There was a different actor standing there. And back in those days, if you did a voiceover, nobody cared.
Yeah, yeah.
Even in the first Star Wars movie back in 1977, James Earl Jones was not listed in the credits.
No, right.
Go look that up. It's true. They added him later. But because who cared if you were a voiceover actor? So the thing is Vic Perrin had done the voice of the Metrone on the planet that Kirk defeated the Gorn. He was also the voice of Nomad, although in that case he was listed in the credits because there was no human actor. It was just a box.
Right, right.
But yeah, that drove me crazy for all those years because it's like, that's the same guy. I know it's the same guy. And I look and it's like, no, it's not the same guy. I'm like, but finally, thanks to the internet, I know Vic Perrin was the voice of the Metrone.
Right. Takei, as Sulu, of course, as you mentioned, is sort of the leader of the Gestapo or the security chief in this mirror universe. He wears a red uniform, of course, and that makes him the first Trek actor to wear all three colors of uniform.
There's something else I didn't realize after 50 years of being a paid...
There you go. You're welcome. And I wanted to mention really quick, too, just about the logs. I had read somewhere, I'm not sure if it was Inside Star Trek or just some old dusty book, about how when they originally envisioned the series, they wanted to give it the captain's log to make it, I think, a little more grounded. Like there would be some character that would, give you plot updates, but would also establish that this is kind of slightly historical. It's a future history. This is something that has happened and been logged. And that's evident, I think, very clearly in this episode where Kirk continues to give captain's logs as if he's on the mirror ship, but they must be done after he came back. Like he doesn't bring a captain's log device with him. So he's sort of delivering this information. So there we were on that ship, but we cut that out to make it seem more immediate.
Yeah, either that or somewhere in the mirror universe, there's a bunch of logs that, somebody's going to be listening to.
Yeah, that never got back to the, exactly.
I know what happened.
Right. Spock is listening to them and then delete that there.
Yeah. There are some captain's logs that are recorded at some point where it's like, no, you can't have recorded it right now because right now you're actually being attacked by the Gorn. You're not recording a captain's log right now.
Yeah. Or like, right. Or in, the Naked Time, where he's like, unknown to us, a disease has infiltrated the ship. Well, go do something about it if you know about it.
Yeah. It's unknown to you, then don't talk about it.
Right, right. Let's get into detail about the episode. It's easily one of the most memorable episodes of the original series, and it's been copied and homaged countless times in pop culture and genre fiction. I mean, even to the point there's a band called Spock's Beard. Like they're just supposed to expect that people know what that is. And I was thinking about this. I was looking into the history of having sort of doppelgangers or evil twins in fiction, and it doesn't really seem to even appear until rather recently. Victorian literature, it starts to pop up. There's a Poe story or a Dostoevsky novel about having a sort of dark side. Why do you think that this resonates so well with modern audiences, even after this is aired so long ago?
Well, I mean, yeah, it's the concept of the evil twin.
Sure.
Now keep in mind there's two things that are happening here. Star Trek had the evil twin. Episode 5, The Enemy Within.
Enemy Within, exactly.
There's an evil Kirk right there. So the idea, and of course Jekyll and Hyde, Bruce Banner and the Hulk.
Right.
Granted, in that case, it's a very big alter ego.
Right.
But yeah, this stuff goes on quite frequently. But here, it wasn't just an alter ego of a single character; it was an alter ego of an entire universe.
Yes.
And that was what made it so interesting. It wasn't just that we were seeing an evil Captain Kirk; we were seeing an evil everybody.
And the fact that everything could be cast in that different light. I noticed that there's a lot of convergent evolution, I think, in the two universes, because you'd have to imagine. Let's take another episode like yesterday's Enterprise of the Next Generation, where one event sort of changes things. And so you've got some of the same crew members, but of course Worf is not going to be there and other things. Why do you think that, or do you have a theory as to why everything is relatively similar? Sulu, Chekhov, they're all there on board still. There's a few differences, but how could they, if everything's different there, how could everybody end up on the same ship and everything is sort of the same? They're just mean.
All right, I'm going to give you two answers.
Sure.
The first one is just repeat to yourself, it's just a show, I should really just relax.
Of course, yes.
The second one is, obviously, we can't go back too far to drop the pebble in the lake, because things could go a little bit fakakta at any point.
Right.
But at the same point in time, we know from watching In a Mirror Darkly from Enterprise that even at the time that Zefram Cochrane was first inventing warp drive, humans were a little bit nasty.
Yeah.
Because we see that teaser where they attack the Vulcans that come there. So it had to happen before then.
Right.
Why are Sulu and Chekhov and everybody else still on the Enterprise? Well, yeah, because the writer needed to use the current actors, and it's more fun that way.
Yeah, it's true.
And if you want to talk about it, in the time aspect of it, within the universe of Star Trek, and it's like, well, maybe it's that time has certain anchor points, like when you're doing animations, certain people need to be born at certain times, who knows. But I will tell you, in the world of fan films, the divergent point is actually dealt with in one of the episodes of Starship Farragut.
Interesting.
Here I get to talk to you as a fan film guy.
Please do.
So Starship Farragut, really fast, a bunch of guys, they start off in Washington, D.C., and then move to Georgia, and they actually spawn Star Trek Continues. They were in the same studio for a while. And Starship Farragut started in, I think, like 2006 or so, 2007. Mm-hmm. And they've done a lot of great stuff. But their very second episode was an episode called For the Want of a Nail. And it's a time travel episode where they go back to colonial times. Washington is basically there with his, ragtag soldiers. And and I won't spoil it for you, but something happens that changes everything. And we don't actually discover that it created the mirror universe until the most recent episode of Starship Farragut, which just came out last year, called The Crossing. And The Crossing is a mirror universe episode. And it's
all right.
A good one.
Interesting.
So, if you guys want to go to Starship's, just do a search for Starship Farragut and For the Want of a Nail, and also for the episode The Crossing, and go watch those. And it's pretty cool. And as long as I'm talking about fan films, I talk about the ultimate mirror universe fan film.
Yeah, please do.
The must-see mirror universe fan film. If you have not seen this fan film, you have not seen fan films. And this is worth. I've watched this one 3 times. Some fan films you only watch once, and you're like, okay, I'm done with it. This one you watch over and over and over again. Star Trek Continues. Their third episode is called Fairest of Them All, and it starts with a recreation of the 3-minute scene from the end of Mirror Mirror. In every revolution, there's one man with a vision. They redo that scene word for word, shot for shot, same music, same gestures, everything. Captain, get in the chamber. Everything happens the exact same. And then, because it's Star Trek Continues, instead of cutting back to our universe, that episode stays in the mirror universe. And Kirk, Scotty, McCoy, and Uhura beam back. And Kirk is pissed.
Right.
And the episode goes from there. And the question is, how does Spock save the Hulkins? Or does he?
Right.
Does he become the captain of the Enterprise? Kirk is not necessarily just going to roll over and die. He's the guy with the Tantalus field. And the rest of the episode is one of the best fan films out there. So honestly, folks, if you go to Star Trek Continues, to do a search for Fairest of Them All, watch that video. And if you want to watch the rest of the episodes of Star Trek Continues, You'll thank me later. It's a fantastic fan series.
Yeah, I have to give it my recommendation as well. I watched it the other day, and it is fascinating how they take, like you said, recreate the first moments of their episode or the last moments of the last one. They beam out, the bad guys beam back in, and then we go from there. And it's a great starting off point to see, what is the follow up? What is the fallout from that original episode? What I want to know is, why aren't the Hawkins jerks in the Mirror Universe?
Well, if you watch The Crossing. Not the and for want of a nail from Starship Farragut, you'll understand really that what happened was something that happened in George Washington's time, and obviously that didn't affect the Hulkan planet. It was just that Earth developed in a different direction, and of course, when they finally went into space, their attitude affected the attitudes of the Vulcans and the Andorians and whoever else, but because they hadn't contacted the Hawkins yet, the Hawkins were just doing the same thing they would have done.
Sure. Okay.
How's that?
So it's not. That's great. It's not the full on, reverse polarity. Bad guys are good guys are bad type thing. I see.
Yeah, because obviously, I mean, the Klingons are still pretty nasty in their universe.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. My question is, how does anything get done in the Terran Empire? Well, I know how it gets done, through assassination, but
there you go.
Like, how can they tease that, or it's not teased. I mean, I guess it's said repeatedly about the Klingon high command that, if you disagree with your captain, you take him out. You're the captain. But I have to wonder how a political structure like that could even exist. And then especially you've got a guy like Evil Kirk who's just disappearing folks left and right. Like, you're there 1 second, you're gone the next.
Well, obviously, how do we solve a problem like, Maria in this case? How do we solve a problem like Jim Kirk? I'm sure people have tried to solve the problem and they have suddenly disappeared. So eventually, after a while, you start asking the question, do I want to solve the problem or do I want to live?
Yeah, right. Sure. I'm surprised that Jim Kirk isn't already farther ahead then.
Well, my guess is that when you're finally going after the people who are higher up than the captaincy, the admirals or whatever, it may be a little harder to get to the place where the Tantalus field actually can, get to them. I don't know.
Sure.
But my guess is that Kirk would eventually maneuver himself to the point of being an admiral.
And it's good to see alien technology actually implemented by Starfleet people, because I feel like every week on the show, they figure out whatever the problem is, they've met a new alien race, and they talk about the cultural and technological exchange. And then we never see any of that technology get integrated into Starfleet in any way. So in this universe, they meet an alien race, take them out, take their technology, and then we just go from there. So maybe the Terran High Command has some kind of defense against the Tantalus field, or they have their own things they're kind of working on.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of possibilities. Answering your question again, why do we keep talking about Star Trek? Because we keep talking about Star Trek. It's just always interesting. What else can you think about?
Do you think alternate universes like this are possible? Is there a Jonathan Lane with a beard out there somewhere?
Actually, there used to be. I used to have one of those.
Oh, okay. So, but then you were
not look nearly as good. But here's the thing. With Star Trek, we have to assume now that there is a Kelvin verse, as much as I hate to admit it.
That's true.
Because Spock went back in time and he changed everything, or Nero did. So it's there. It's there in Star Trek. Is it here for us? There's somebody that said every decision you make can create another alternate universe, in which case there are so many alternate universes because every decision everybody makes during their entire life going back for the entire time of making decisions, suddenly there's all these universes. I can't imagine there's that much space in space.
Well, if space is infinite, according to the many worlds hypothesis, then I guess it would be possible.
Yeah, it's but you really need an entire new universe?
Yeah, right. And at some point, I guess it becomes narratively kind of uninteresting.
For example, I've got a glass of water right here next to me. I'm about to take a sip of this water. Oh, wait, I didn't take a sip of the water. I just put it down. Now, somewhere
Terran Empire.
There's an entire new universe was created where somebody actually took the sip of the water. There's a Jonathan there that actually drank the water. I'm going to drink the water now. Now there's 3 universes.
I don't feel any different.
I don't feel any different either. But the multiverse has to create space for all that. You know how big the universe is? It's freaking huge, man.
Yeah, it has to be. You're not the only Star Trek fan in your house. As you mentioned before, your son Jayden is a Trek fan, and I got the chance to talk to him earlier in the week, and we had a great talk about Star Trek, and we're going to go to it right now.
Well, my real dream is to be in a Star Wars podcast.
Really?
This interview's over.
It's not over.
No, it's not over.
Oh, well, we can't get you a Star Wars podcast right now. You got to do Star Trek. Do you at least like Star Trek enough to be able to do a Star Trek podcast as opposed to a Star Wars podcast?
Yes.
You're a professional. You can do this. So, Jayden, how old are you?
6 1/4.
How many more months until you're 7? 8 more months.
8 more months until I'm 7.
That's not too far. When did you first start watching Star Trek?
Maybe 3 or 4.
And do you know how many episodes you've seen?
Daddy hasn't told me yet.
Well, we watched all of the TOS episodes once.
Okay.
And then we watched all of the animated episodes.
Oh,
so
great.
79 plus 24.
Yeah.
And this
22,
is our
whatever it was.
podcast for Mirror Mirror.
That's
Oh,
right.
yes, that's
We're
right.
talking about Mirror Mirror. That's right. So in Mirror Mirror, Captain Kirk and McCoy and Uhura and Scotty, they get transported to a ship.
Yeah, this is kind of like a bottle. It's
A bottle episode?
it's kind of like a bottle. It's almost a bottle.
Uh-huh.
You know that little scene at the first part where they're down at the planet?
Right. They're talking to the people in the old-timey clothes.
So that was what? That was the only scene that didn't take place on the...
Starship Enterprise. And when they tried to beam up, they went to a parallel universe.
Right. And everybody is like evil there, including Mr. Spock.
Yeah, he has a beard.
Yeah, that's right. Did you like it?
And the rank up is assassination.
Yeah. It's getting promoted
and
is
that
rough there.
Captain Kirk must have survived lots of assassinations because he's still captain.
That's true. And we find out later in the episode that he's got a special device that helps him get rid of his enemies.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we found about the Agonizer and the Agony Booth.
Yeah.
Those are on the good Enterprise.
No, those are. I don't think the Good Enterprise has those. Can you imagine if you woke up one day and you and your dad were in a world that was just like ours, except everybody was evil? What do you think you'd do if that happened?
If I was on the Starship Enterprise, I would get a spaceship for my dad and for me, and I would grab somebody and throw them out the Starship Enterprise window.
Oh,
Okay.
throw it out the window?
If they were bad!
Oh, if they were bad. Well, what if everybody's bad? You don't have enough windows to do that. There's 430
No!
people on that ship, and there's only like about, 24 windows?
And Daddy,
What?
all of the space air would kill all of them.
All the space air?
Yeah,
There's no air in space.
I know.
Oh, okay.
That
Just
would
the lack
kill
of air, yeah.
because they wouldn't have space suits on.
Oh, what would happen when they got into space?
Okay, they would die.
So you'd start working on your promotion right away then.
Yeah. So were you there? You'd be throwing everybody out because once everybody else was off the ship, you as the youngest cadet would then be the captain, and you'd be able to give orders to everybody except that there wouldn't be anybody left to give orders.
No, I would
okay.
give orders to you. You would be still alive.
Oh, okay.
Oh, lucky you.
Don't I outrank you?
Not in this world.
When I'm in first grade, that means I can rank up to engineer.
Oh,
Then when I'm
Okay, all right.
in grade, I rank up to lieutenant. And when
Lieutenant. Yeah.
He's got his whole career planned out.
I move up to third grade, I'm the captain.
Oh, okay.
Okay, all right. They just get younger and younger.
They really do. I mean, I seen the reboot, and Chris Pine was pretty younger.
That's
young
true,
when
yeah.
he is there, so.
So, Jayden, one of the things about the evil Enterprise is that everybody seems to be fighting with each other, which is different than the regular Enterprise, the good one, because everybody works together. If the evil Enterprise had to fight the good one, who do you think could win?
The bad one.
Oh, really? Now, why do you think that?
Because they are evil, and the good Enterprise figures stuff out by talking.
That's true, yeah. But the good Enterprise is pretty tough, though. They can handle their own and some scraps.
Well, if I was on the good Enterprise and I had to defeat the bad Enterprise, I would stun phasers to their highest, all of the phasers to their highest rank so I could destroy it.
So you just get right in there.
Just
Yeah.
shoot first and ask questions later?
No, I would I wouldn't do that. I would have to destroy it. I would know that they would destroy me.
Oh.
So I would destroy
Self-defense.
them with all my phasers at full stunt.
Sure.
Full stunt. Okay. Yeah, that would potentially. What about photon torpedoes? Would you launch them too?
Yes, I would launch every single phaser
Fire everything.
Shoot it all.
at full stunt.
At full stunt. Okay, you guys heard that. Full stunt, everybody.
If it's full stunt, the order's given.
Yes.
Jayden, how do you think you'd look with a beard like Evil Spock?
Do you think you would look cool with a Fu Manchu beard? Well, you're not shaving yet, are you?
Yeah, well, I am starting to feel some lines on here.
You are? Oh my goodness, you're growing up so fast.
Oh boy. I hope you're in the right universe here.
Yeah, oh my goodness.
I am in the right universe.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's
I've
great.
never switched universes.
Well, there's time for that. Hey, Jayden, one thing I like about the Spock, the quote-unquote evil Spock, is that even though he's technically evil, Captain Kirk is able to talk to him and kind of convince him to make his world a better place. Do you think that you could talk to evil Spock or an evil character and convince them that they should make their world better?
Could you turn them back to the light side of the Force? There you go. There's your Star Wars podcast.
Yeah.
Yes, that's not fully a Star Wars podcast.
Oh,
Don't
okay.
try to sneak that in here.
Oh, okay. I know there's good in you, Father.
Mr. Spock. I really like Spock. I think he's probably my favorite Star Trek character. Who's your favorite Star Trek character?
Oh, another good question.
Scotty.
Scotty!
You like Scotty. Oh, why do you like Scotty?
I knew you were gonna
Because
say
he's an engineer like
That's
me.
right.
that. Yeah, Jayden is an awesome engineer. What do you like to build more than anything else in the world?
Legos.
Absolutely.
Uh-huh.
This kid is a Lego master.
That's a pretty good start for an engineer. You know, Jayden, Star Trek the original series is a pretty old show at this point. You know, it was on before I was born. It was probably on before your dad was born, too.
Not quite. I'm about to turn 50, dude.
Oh, okay. All right. Cut that out.
Next week.
Have you seen any of the newer Star Trek shows, like The Next Generation?
He has not seen any of the newer shows yet, but we did go to see a movie this summer. Do you remember what that movie was?
Rogue One.
No, that wasn't the movie. That was this winter. During the summer. It was the first time you ever told me you wanted to see a movie twice. You said you...
Star Trek Beyond.
Ooh,
That's
Star Trek
right.
Beyond. And what'd
I
you think?
saw it 2 times.
He
Oh,
did.
you must have liked it.
See Rogue One 2 times.
What was your favorite part about Star Trek Beyond?
When Starfleet won.
Oh, when Starfleet won.
Okay, good.
In fact, he actually cheered the first time he saw it when that happened. He actually said at the top of his voice, "Yay, Starfleet won!"
And everybody looked at me.
They did.
I got another question for you, Jayden. Do you have a favorite episode of the show?
Did you like the one with the hairy salt monster? Did you like the one with the white rabbit?
Definitely not the one with this hairy salt monster. That one was definitely a little scary for me.
That was scary. Now, I remember when we were watching the episode with Finnegan. Now, Finnegan was one that was always playing tricks on Captain Kirk, remember?
Yeah.
And you came up with the solution. You knew exactly what was going on when we got to the halfway point of that episode, and you said, "Daddy, I know who's playing tricks on everybody." You said it's Finnegan, and he was the one who put on the rabbit costume.
Oh, yeah.
So Jade had that episode figured out halfway through. He said Finnegan's in behind everything, and he put on the rabbit costume to trick Captain Kirk into coming down to the planet.
I see you've seen so many of these episodes. You're starting to kind of figure them out. Jayden, I guess I can level with you a little bit. Do you want to tell me who your favorite Star Wars character is?
Oh, okay. We've now turned this into a podcast for Star Wars. You get to talk about Star Wars and your favorite Star Wars character.
Yes! You're going to say, I knew it. It's Luke Skywalker.
Luke Skywalker. Yeah, I sort of knew that.
Well, I want to thank you for talking with me about Star Trek today, Jayden.
Yeah, but the Star Wars podcast just started.
Yeah, I will. I'll definitely have you back on when I have a Star Wars podcast. Would you like that?
What do you think I'm going to say?
What do I think you're going to say? I think you're going to say, no, I would never do a Star Wars podcast.
I am going to do a Star Wars podcast.
Well, Jayden, thank you very much for joining us today. I think I'm going to finish up with Aaron and talk a little bit more about Mirror Mirror.
And you can talk about when you're done with that, can you talk about a Star Wars podcast?
Maybe.
Just please do it for your son.
Thanks, Jayden. So thanks for connecting me with Jayden. We had a really good talk. I do have to get to work on that Star Wars podcast now. There's a hunger for it.
Yeah, he is so ready for the Star Wars podcast.
What do you think about the new Trek films? Just curious. You had mentioned them before.
Yeah, I have kind of mixed feelings about that. I appreciate the fact that J.J. Abrams saved the franchise. I mean, a lot of people say, well, Star Trek wasn't dying. Yeah, Star Trek was dying. I'm sorry. I was there picketing in front of Paramount in 2005 trying to, don't cancel Enterprise.
Right.
Yeah, they canceled Enterprise anyway. Fans were not able to keep Star Trek going. They just weren't. When Star Trek Nemesis came out, I think it was 2002 in December, it was not the number one movie during the week it was released. It was the number 2 movie. Do you want to know what the number 1 movie in America was?
What was it?
Made in America, or Made in Manhattan.
Okay.
It was
Great.
Jennifer Lopez chick flick scored over Star Trek Nemesis. By that point, you knew time was running out for Star Trek. We were already in Enterprise territory. Voyager had just gone off the air. And, it was just one of those things where, say what you want about J.J. Abrams, he revitalized the franchise. Unfortunately, he revitalized Star Trek by turning it into Star Wars. And so we have this red scorpion on an ice planet taking his case in Captain Kirk. Seriously, I don't think people are going to see Star Trek, the new reboot series, and decide I'm going to become an engineer or I'm going to become a scientist or a doctor because they're seeing, Carl Urban playing McCoy, or Scotty is not going to inspire somebody to be an engineer.
They might want to be a motocross racer, though.
Yeah, motocrosser. Kirk was definitely going to inspire people to go dirt biking.
Right.
But yeah, so that's where my heart sort of sinks a little bit with Star Trek, in that it's just not going to have the same impact on the next generation.
Sure.
Which is why I am enjoying so much that. When Jayden said he wanted to be Scotty, I had no idea he was. I sort of knew he was going to say that, but I've never asked him that question before. But when I was younger, I wanted to be Spock because I was like total scientist guy, and I have a friend who became a nurse because of Dr. McCoy, and we were the generation of children inspired by that. The NASA scientists and the JPL scientists out there who, watched Spock and McCoy and Uhura and Sulu and all of them and just said, I want to do that too. I want to help make that a reality. And I don't think J.J. Abrams is inspiring anything other than stunt people.
Yeah, I don't think that he's really thinking about that. It's not necessarily his job, but I do agree with you. They hopefully will have a chance to be inspired in a similar way with the premiere of Star Trek Discovery this year.
Yeah, we hope. Now, you know what? Here's the thing. I mean, at least it's new Star Trek.
Right.
And it may screw things up entirely. They've got new uniforms that don't match the uniforms from the Cage, even though they're taking place in the same time period as that. And people are going to complain about that. So Trekkies are always going to complain about something, dude.
Oh, definitely.
But I'm one of the people who's probably going to subscribe. I know a lot of people are planning to boycott it. I have a Facebook group called Small Access for anybody who wants to try to protest the fan film guidelines by watching in groups. So it's not a boycott. You basically just get 6 of your friends together.
I see what you mean. Okay, yeah.
One person, pays for the subscription. You all go over to their house, and everybody else pays for the pizza. I mean, it's not like you're selling tickets or anything. It's like, oh, we'll treat you for pizza. You have viewing parties. It's fun. But what you do is you turn 6 subscriptions at $6 a month into 1 subscription at $6 a month. Mm-hmm. So this was my way of protesting the fan film guidelines, not to say to eliminate them, but to please let's revisit and revise, not repeal and replace, but just revise them a little bit. So if you want more information on that, you can go to Facebook and just type in Project Small Access, which is a play on all access.
Right.
But I'm not telling anybody to boycott the show, and I am most likely going to find my own little collective of fans to watch it as well. And I may be the one who pays the subscription. We'll see. But yeah, I'm curious to see what they do with it, and I wish them the best of luck. And please don't screw it up.
Yeah, please don't. And hopefully Paramount and CBS will get the message, their model that you're trying to send there. Question for you. You mentioned Spock previously. He is also probably my favorite character, and I think he does a great job in this episode in both universes. I love the fact that he pretty much figures out immediately our Spock, that the evil counterparts are not who they seem to be, and just chucks him in the brig, and then that's where they are. It would be a little rough to have sort of, I think in this modern day and age, if we did this episode today with TNG or Enterprise or something else, you would definitely have two running stories where we're looking at one universe, we're flashing back to the other one, but maybe that was a little more too complicated for 60s TV. But I like that the result of that is, yeah, of course, Spock figures it out right away and just throws him in the brig. And then they're yelling at him and he's like, oh, this is fascinating.
Well, that saved them a lot of trouble, because the thing is that they told a really good story in the Mirror Universe. And, that story was the perfect length. It wasn't really, there are a couple of places where it went a little bit more slowly, but for the most part, it did everything it needed to do. And that was the fun place to be. And the evil Kirk being on the good Enterprise, that can almost happen anytime. In fact, if anything, that already happened. That happened in The Enemy Within.
In the first season, yeah.
Exactly. So we didn't really need to see what an evil Kirk would do on the Enterprise. We wanted to see what a good Kirk would do on an evil Enterprise, and that's what we got.
Sure. We do get that funny little moment where Kirk is pondering, like, what could they be doing right now? And then smash cut to, let me go.
Oh, what do you want, Spock? Credits?
You want credits? Is there a scene or a moment or character that stands out for you in this episode? This amazing episode with plenty of great moments?
Kyle. So this is one of the first episodes where we really get to see Kyle, played by John Winston. And, he gets some really good lines with it. In fact, there's not a lot of other episodes where we see as much Kyle. Like Doomsday Machine has some good Kyle in it.
Yeah.
And I always loved seeing those guys that weren't the main ones. I mean, I loved Kevin Riley.
Yeah.
Who doesn't? I'll take you home again, Kathleen.
Ice cream for everybody, yeah.
So I loved seeing those guys that were just, slightly elevated above background extra because they actually got a line to say.
Sure.
One of my other favorite characters is Washburn, who only appears in the episode The Doomsday Machine. But if you watch The Doomsday Machine, there's like this constant tug of Washburn that goes on. Like everybody seems to want Washburn. So Scotty, he has to fix the impulse engines in the Constellation, and he goes, "Come along, lad." And Washburn starts going with Scotty, and then Kirk says, "No, Washburn, you get over there."
Right.
And Washburn's like, "Shoot, what do I do now?"
You're right.
He's got more braids in his sleeve. I'll stay with Kirk.
Right.
But I used to love those characters. So yeah, for me, I really loved, how totally freaked out, scared, shirtless, that can't curse, that Kyle was, when he screwed up. He knew he screwed up. He had to report to Spock, and the agonizer's coming out, and he's gone.
Yeah, that's a great mention. I also like Uhura. She's a real highlight for me in this episode. I like how she knows how to handle herself, and it's always great when they give Nichelle Nichols something specific to do because she's always great. I like how our four crew members all figure it out really fast. I think in another episode, you'd spend a couple act breaks with them trying to come to terms with the fact that they're in a mirror universe. And of course, if they did that on this ship, they'd be dead. So that gets sped up a little bit for story's sake. But I love how quickly they assimilate themselves into the thing. And Kirk's like, yeah, okay, go do that. He's giving orders and trying to figure out where he is, but he knows he needs to be surreptitious at this point.
And that scene where Kirk first has the library computer, working on the problem.
Yes.
And the library computer, calculates what they have to do to fix it, and it gets on, puts on one of those little memory disks, and Kirk hands the memory disk, which is just yellow, and he gives it to Scotty, and he says, "Scotty, can you do it?" Now, there's been no readout, there's no computer screen, there's just a bunch of lights in front of Kirk,
Right.
And he hands Scotty basically this plain yellow thing and says, Scotty, can you do it? And he goes, not by myself. I'll need some help. And you'd be too conspicuous. At which point, he looks at McCoy and he goes, I'm a doctor, not an engineer. Now you're an engineer. But
now you're an engineer.
How did Scotty even know? I mean, obviously the computer is given, total, really difficult, stuff to solve. And you're holding a yellow disc in your hand and suddenly you know exactly how to solve this problem, Scotty? Okay, fine.
I also like how when they're reading out, Kirk has the computer read out his service record of the Kirk in this universe to get an idea of who we're dealing with here. And it starts spooling off these atrocities. And he just shuts it off. He doesn't even listen to the whole thing. He's like, oh, boy. Okay. That's what's going on.
But the only other mention of Captain Pike in the entire series.
That's right. That's right. Which I suppose anybody who had B. Joe Trimble's Concordance would be excited about.
I don't think she had written it yet. But
I have one. Do you have the same one as I do? There's like a wheel put into the front cover so you can sort of look up the index numbers of the episodes.
Best thing ever, that wheel.
Yeah, it's
in the
pretty
cover.
cool.
If you've never seen the Concordance, just go to Amazon and take a look. Yeah, that wheel where you basically just sort of match up the episode and you can see the star date and you can see the air date and it's alphabetical, but you can also see them in
Yeah, it's great.
It's brilliant. It was so much fun. It's so 70s. I mean, it's like such a 70s
Oh,
thing to do.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. As we wrap up here, were there any final thoughts that you had about the episode? Anything you missed out?
You know what? Just once again, watch Fairest of Them All, as fan films go and the Starship Farragut ones. There's another fan film that takes place in the Mirror Universe called Dark Frontier. On fanfilmfactor.com, I have a Prime directive. It has 2 rules in it. Rule number 1, there's no such thing as a bad Star Trek fan film.
Sure.
Rule number 2, if you see a bad Star Trek fan film, refer to rule number 1.
Okay.
So that's what I'm going to leave on Dark Frontier there. But seriously, just give fan films a shot. I've got a lot of them on Fan Film Factor. You can see them, link to them. And as for Mirror Mirror, any final thoughts on that? It's like, hey, look, anything that can give us, the goatee or the Fu Manchu as the ultimate representation of evil.
Right.
And you think about what they were doing back in 1967. They didn't know that Star Trek was going to become Star Trek. They didn't know that Mirror Mirror was literally going to set an example for like all of science fiction forever to come.
Yeah.
They were just thinking, okay, we've got to come up with a way to make Spock look different.
Right.
Well, we put him in a different uniform. Yeah. What else? I mean,
bleach his hair. Right.
He only looks kind of evil with the eyebrows and anyway. How are you gonna make somebody who looks like Satan look even more evil? Let's put a beard on him.
Right.
And seriously, these guys were doing stuff week after week after week without even thinking about it more than this is my job and this is a problem I've got to solve and I've got to go on to the next problem the next week. And God bless these people because they gave us this magic, this legacy that we are now talking about 50 years later. And who the hell cares? Well, we do.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
it's amazing.
So thank you, everybody, from 1966 to 1969, because you did. You made the magic for us.
Absolutely. Let's talk My Space Dad Can Beat Up Your Space Dad. Who's your favorite captain and why?
Cisco. Absolutely Cisco. And you know what? If it hadn't been for the episode in the pale moonlight, I don't think I would have given that answer. That was the defining Cisco moment. But, for me, Cisco was dealing with so much crap because he couldn't leave.
Yeah.
Picard could just go to a planet and fix everything and leave. And same thing, Kirk, every week, different planet, go, talk the computer into killing itself, go to the next planet.
Right.
Kiss a space babe, get somebody impregnated, and go to the next planet. And, Kirk basically destroys the Mirror Universe for the Terran Empire. It goes back to our universe. He's done.
Right.
Cisco doesn't have that option. He is stuck on Deep Space Nine. He does something on Bajor, and it's going to come back to bite him in the butt. A year later, 2 years later. And that was the great thing about that show, because it did. So anybody who can deal with that much stuff, hey, more power to him. So that's why I like Cisco the most.
Yeah, he's kind of forced to grow because he's, like you said, he's forced to face the consequences of these things. I mean, he's just like this depressed widower who gets this crappy assignment out in the middle of nowhere, and then suddenly it's, oh no, by the way, there's this huge wormhole, and also you are a religious figure, and in a couple years, the largest invasion fleet that the Federation's ever seen is going to come through that wormhole. So, step up. You got to grow.
Yeah, and he does. And he not only does he grow himself, he grows a beard. This brings us back to that Fu Manchu again. And that is the coolest thing about Cisco, when he finally grows that beard and shaves his head, and Hawk is back.
Hawk, I know. If any of my listeners are going to understand that, I have no clue.
Who is old enough to understand that reference?
Yeah.
I'm turning 50 in a week, dude.
Oh, well, happy birthday in a week, I guess.
Yeah, actually, January 17th. I don't know when this is going to be airing. I may already be 50 by the time this comes out.
Probably. Well, at the end of the show, you will receive a commission at the rank of ensign. I know you're a vice admiral in another universe, but at this one, you start at the bottom. What department on the ship do you want to work in?
Oh, well, if there's like a department of like eating really bad food, that's where I need to be. The department of ice cream, that would be fantastic.
Yeah, sure. There with Riley, yeah.
Actually, it's very funny. I've been in the Starfleet, the International Star Trek Fan Organization, which is, by the way, sfi.org. I'm going to give them a free plug there. SFI, sure. StarfleetInternational.org. I have been in this club since 1983. That's how you get to be a vice admiral. And I have served on a number of different chapter starships in my time: the USS Constitution, the USS Avenger, and the USS Angeles most recently. And I've had positions like chief science officer and executive officer and such. And when I was finally on the USS Angeles, I was getting sick and tired of all this pomp and circumstance. Like, okay, I need to create a good, fun position for myself, because by that point, I just want to kind of sit back and watch everybody else do the work. So my official position on board the USS Angeles is chief kibitzer.
Nice.
So there you go. That is my official job, is to just sit back on the side of the bridge, push a few buttons, and kind of watch everybody else do everything.
I think that works perfectly.
And write my Fan Film Factor blog.
Yeah, of course. Well, Ensign Lane, thanks for joining me to talk about Star Trek and the Star Trek universe today. If people want to continue the conversation, and they can at EISTpod on Twitter and the Enterprising Individuals Facebook page, where can people find you online?
Well, obviously, fanfilmfactor.com. That's the best place to find me. I'm also occasionally a blogger on axonarproductions.com. If you're a fan of Axonar, feel free to go to that website. If you can't stand Axonar, then there's lots of places where you can go to. I won't tell you. By the way, speaking of Axonar, for anybody who's been following the lawsuit on Axonar and who hasn't, they are being sued by CBS and Paramount for copyright infringement. I have been blogging almost nonstop about it, and I've been talking about other fan films at the same time. But if you've been wanting to track that at all, go to Fan Film Factor, and there is a special section for just the Axonar lawsuit blogs. And trust me, there's been like 50 of them. Very light, fun reading.
I know that there's been a lot of controversy in the community recently with Paramount last year releasing their Paramount Fan Film Guidelines, which a lot of people found were too restrictive.
Yeah, well, I mean, if your fan film is going to be limited to 15 minutes long, I mean, this is an entirely new podcast if you want to have me back at some point, but
sure.
One of the guidelines was your fan film can't be longer than 15 minutes, which is like saying, okay, your house can't be larger than one room. Can you live in a one-room house? Yes, you can, but you just can't do a lot with it. And it's not like we want to say, okay, well, we can make 2-hour long, fan films, but there's a lot of stops on the bus between 15-minute long and 2 hours long. Yeah. One of the things I would love to convince CBS and Paramount to allow is continuing webisodes. Allow fan films. If it's got to be 15 minutes long, so somebody thinks it's actual real Star Trek, fine. Then don't give us a limit of just 2 parts, which it is right now. It's like, okay, you can do 15-minute episodes and most 2 parts, no continuing series.
Yeah.
Allow a continuing series. Allow webisodes, and say, look, you can't have your fan film come out any more frequently than once every 3 months. So if you want to make an 8-part episode, that's going to take you 2 years, deal with it.
Yeah.
But, it's just one of those things where I understand why the guidelines came around. We talked about them on Project Small Access, and half of them were fine. I mean, the people, we were not just saying, get rid of them. Like, we understand, half of these are fine. Another half of the half were just a little confusing. Maybe they could be rewritten a little bit. And some of them were just like, seriously? But once again, you can see more discussion on that on Facebook on Project Small Access. But we're still going to try to convince the studios to take another look at them. The studios did say they wanted this to be the beginning of a conversation. John Van Sitter said that on a podcast, and
right.
Well, yeah, we'd like to have a conversation with them. Unfortunately, there's so many fan filmmakers and so many fans; it's hard to get all of them in one room with John Van Sitters all at one time.
Right.
So I've sort of been trying to be the funnel for that.
We'll have to have you on the show again to talk about it sometime.
Well, I'm always here for you.
Well, thanks again for joining me on the show.
Thank you for having me.
And we are signing off until the next mission. Hailing frequencies closed.
It's on your